Yeah, so my presentation that I wanted to talk about was incorporating Google Drive into game planning and analytics. And For those of you that didn't see it already, I guess my name's Nick Steinbach, and defensive assistant at Monmouth College. It's a Division III school, smaller school here in Central Illinois. Then I'm also the defensive analyst for the Iowa Barnstormers, professional indoor football league team based out of Des Moines, Iowa, so also in the Midwest. Although I work remotely for them, so I'm not there every day at practice or whatnot, but I still do a lot of analytics and film breakdown and all that good stuff too. So just a little bit about myself and my background. I got my bachelor's degree from St. Ambrose University. It's a Catholic university in Eastern Iowa. Then I also have my USA Weightlifting Level 1 Sports Performance Coach certification. I also have my USA Football Heads Up Football certification. When I first got out of college, I spent 2 years at Washington University in St. Louis. I was more in a strength and conditioning role there, and I also worked as a javelin coach. So I was there for a couple of years and then moved to Illinois. And that's when I really got into working in football. I spent 5 years at Peoria Notre Dame High School as a defensive coordinator and a defensive backs coach. And then 1 year at Peoria Heights Quest High School as a defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach. And then I just signed on at Monmouth this spring, so that still is new. And I was excited for the football season, but obviously things happened as they did, and we're hoping to play in the spring. So anytime I get a chance to talk with coaches, I think I aside from, the game planning and analytics piece, I like talking a little bit about my coaching philosophy, just because I think that's important for you guys to know about where I'm coming from as a coach and as a person and as an educator, things like that. I think as a whole, even though, play calling and scheme are great, I think relationships are even more important. And I think developing relationships with the players and the staff just makes your unit more cohesive as a whole. I think some of my best friends are the guys that I've coached with and been around. And then I also, those relationships that you're able to build with your players, it's a joy of mine when I get text messages from, kids that I coached years ago and they update me on how they're doing and where they're at and things that they're doing now and, getting married and having kids and things like that, I think is really cool. And I think building those relationships really creates a strong sense of family culture. And I think that as a whole, you're just able to better work together and get what you need out of the kids, and also with your staff that you're working with as well. You guys are able to collectively work together, bounce ideas off of one another, and all that stuff too. And I think that it's really important with today's athlete. Just with the age group that that we're looking at now and how they've grown up and the things that they've been exposed to, they all learn differently, right? We all know how kids are. They all respond to things in different ways, and how you talk to one kid might not work for another kid. And I think that sometimes you've got a kid that will respond really well to that stern, hard coaching, and then you've got another kid that you've kind of got to take under your wing a little bit and kind of carry them along that way. And I think that with coaching and being in any sport as a coach, it comes down to teaching too. And I think that being able to teach the concepts effectively, to teach what you're trying to ask the kids to do on the football field, I think is super important, just because you don't want to just give them the information and expect it to happen. You've got to teach it, right? You've got to do it different ways. You got to show it different ways. And I think that talking about the whole kid and not just the player is just as important too. One of the things that I always tell my kids is that, they're student athletes, and what comes first? Student. And it's important to be a student. not just a football player. And being able to, you know, understand the work that they need to get done in the classroom, and then also caring about what's going on in their lives. With a lot of kids, you know, they bring a lot of different things to the table, from personal experiences to, you know, things that they've dealt with in their past to, you know, things that they might be going through that day. And especially now with the pandemic and what kids are facing every day with the, you know, the mental health issues and things like that, not being able to do certain things because they're having to stay at home. And that's tough. And I think that caring about the whole kid really helps bring out that family culture. You're able to work together more cohesively as a team. So that's a little piece about what I think about with my philosophy. As far as getting into the actual topic of the talk today, looking at incorporating Google Drive into your game planning and analytics piece, a lot of the things that I love about Google Drive, it's a long list, but I think that when I think about just how when I kind of got started using it in my football preparation and game planning and things like that, a lot of it came from being an educator, right? And being an educator, you've got to be able to use all the tools at your disposal when you're teaching in the classroom. And just naturally, you know, our schools that I've used in the past have all used Google. So it just kind of made sense with me to be able to use that for football as well. And I think it's great too, because it's free, obviously, you know, with your Google account. You can pay for more space monthly. That's something that I do just because of, you know, the amount of film that I keep logged on Google Drive and being able to have that space for my documents and things like that. I also think it's great just because it's easy to share with the staff. Then also you can live edit those documents, which, you know, you might run into issues with other programs. If you send something as an attachment, they change something, then you got to send it back. In my opinion, it's easier just to share the document and be able to live edit it together if that's something that you're working on both at the same time. And it's incredibly user-friendly, easy to learn. Everything in there is, I mean, you can figure it out yourself almost. And a lot of the stuff that I've done and the things that I've created are just from me, you know, figuring it out myself. And, you know, thankful that, you know, other coaches have put stuff out there and put their templates out as well. And you're able to, you know, share and pick up what you need from here and there. But a lot of this stuff, you know, I think you just kind of figure out what works for you and you use that to help your team. I think as a whole, though, organization definitely contributes to success. You know, I think about some of the good teams that I've been a part of and the experiences that I've had. And I think a lot of the success contributes to the level of organization within the football program from the top down and being able to kind of handle things in every sense of the matter, you know, in a very ABCD order. And I think that really helps. So as far as where I see the game going, I think technology and analytics are it's obviously becoming an edge to helping you win, right? And basically, you know, if you aren't using these things, you're going to be missing out on data and different components that could contribute to you making decisions that influence the game one way or the other. And I think, you know, you see it now on the NFL sidelines. I've seen the picture there, and you see it in other levels on TV, the level of technology that's present on the field, and then also, you know, not just on the game field, but also in practices and in other forms of your game preparation as well. And I think that if you aren't using technology and analytics into your football program, I think you're gonna get left behind at some point because other teams are gonna start using things to their advantage, and you'll be able to, you know, not be able to be on the same even playing field. So just to jump in kind of first, I wanted to show you as a whole just kind of how my drive looks. So this is just kind of the opening page here. And I break everything up into folders. Okay, so I've got my different folders here for my different things, different ideas and whatnot. But I'm going to go into this one right here, into template copies. So obviously with Google Drive, you've got different ways to do a document. You've got Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. You know, and that's kind of akin to PowerPoint, Excel, Word, right? Same type of thing. Now, when it comes to some of the different things that I've created, these are all templates that I've done, a lot of them just in Docs, just because I think in some instances, I think it's easier to monitor things with the tables and whatnot in Docs opposed to a spreadsheet. So that's just kind of something with me personally. But as far as the way that I've constructed some of the templates, let's go ahead and I'll just open up something one of the things that I made here. So this is a offensive analysis scouting report that I put together just based off of things that I looked at when I was game prepping and whatnot. So you can go in, you could enter your things into there, and each of the sections of the chart are easy to change, and you can obviously share and live edit those as you go through. And then as you go through, I incorporated different tables, right? So you've got your starting lineup for what you're looking to scout, what you're looking to game prep for, and then also just basic run pass play percentages based off of your quarter, going by 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then into down and distance tendency. So you can go in and you have your different sections there, and you can edit each of those. And then run and pass by down. So looking at what we do on first down or second down, run pass percentages, just to help with your overall view for what they're doing during each possession. And then another portion that I like to look at as well is run inside, run outside, pass outside, run long, and pass deep. Oh yeah, you guys can just unmute and ask. That's fine.
Perfect. Hi, Coach.
Yeah.
Quick question. So basically, you get this information from like programs like Huddle or else software.
Yeah.
You just put it in so that you can spread it to position coaches and whoever is in your box there. Yeah,
sure, 100%. And so like the whole thing that started with me using Google Drives, I had, obviously when you're using Huddle and whatnot, you're able to get a certain level of analytics from there, and you're able to get some of the information from there as well. And then this is just another format to use if maybe you don't have that, Huddle Assist or whatever. And there were a couple instances where I was in a program where we didn't have Huddle Assist, so a lot of the analytics ended up being something that I did myself. And that's where these templates kind of came in handy. But yeah, once you go through and I go through and create the breakdowns or whatever, I incorporate that into a weekly packet that I share out to my other coaches that I work with. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. And so how big of pages or information would you send out like for a game? I've seen the files that you had in your box. That's a lot of stuff. Yeah,
for sure. It is a lot of stuff. And when I look at a team, I want to know kind of how, I'm going to show you this because I think you guys will like this too. I kind of like to know just as a whole, what are they doing? Run pass. What are the formations that you're using? What are some of the checks that they're using? What are their key things out of certain formations? So when I would go through and put together my packet that would go out to the coaches, This would be an example of what I would put in week to week. All the documents that you would see here, this is what would go out to my other coaches that I work with. And some of it too, I would even share it out to kids, just so that way they're able to kind of see, like if you've got a kid that's more of a visual learner, and you want them to kind of take a look at the different formations, then that's something that you can maybe, show them on that aside from just on film, right? And it's a paper copy, it's something physical that they're able to look at. And then with some of the different setups, shout out to Cody Alexander. I don't know if you guys have seen him on Match Quarters, but this is his template. This is something that I got from him. But it's easy to be able to take it and download that and put it into your Google Drive. So this is an example of one thing that I would put out to the kids and the coaches, just so that way they're able to see the different formations that we're going to see, how we're going to align, and then also what are some of the different things that we see out of this offensive formation. So obviously with my verbiage there, like, you see kind of how I word things and how I'm looking at things when I'm game prepping. But one of the key things that I'm looking at is personnel. So we're looking at how many running backs, how many tight ends. So obviously, 32 personnel, 3 running back, 2 tight end. Then I call this formation just like a double wing. Then I put in how I'm going to align to it, and then what my call is, and things like that. So I go through, and so this one's an 8-pager. And then the other thing that I did through Google Drive as well is putting out week-to-week practice plans. So I put in through here just the different timestamps, right, for what we're doing. I always opened up with Indy, then from there went into blitz timing, and then into a pass skeleton, inside run, whatever, then a team period at the end. I used different technology for the kids for what we focused on each day. So I called, Monday like a mental Monday, Tuesday was turnover Tuesday, and things like that. It just gets the kids excited and gets them excited about what they're doing that day. So that was another document that I would put into the weekly packet, and it was 3 pages. And then I typically would put in an example of my call sheet with my packet as well, just so that way the other coaches could get an eye on it and see kind of what I'm looking at for my calls that week. And then also if there's something that, I miss, or if there's something that that I forgot, or for whatever reason, you know what I'm saying, that they're able to look at with that. So I typically would put that in the packet. And then the hit chart that I would put together. This one is a pretty basic one that I did. And obviously, like I said, you can get some of this stuff off Huddle Assist too, if you guys are in analytics that way. So I, just put in the basic formations with how I labeled it, what they were run past, and then key plays out of there. So this was a more simplified version. And this would be an example of like something that I would send out to the kids too. Because, well, one, it's got, our verbiage on there for what we call formations. It's got, how many times they run those formations. So you can see obviously that the TT double wing was one of their big formations. They used it 13 times. And then also I put in the key plays. So that's different things that they could then look at and be like, okay, if they're in TT double wing and, they ran the ball 10 out of 13 times when they're in that formation. These would be some of the key plays that I'd be looking for when they're going to run that formation. And when you're going through and doing your breakdowns, it's sometimes is easy to pick up, different route combinations that they specifically use. So with this example here out of 2x2, we call that just, the basic 2x2 spread from the shotgun. And they were in it they're in it 7 times, but they passed it only 2 times, right? So out of the 7 times that they ran the different formations, they only passed it 2 times out of 2x2. Well, out of those 2 pass plays that they ran, these are the 2 different route combinations that they had, right? So 9-5-5-9. So that's, just 9s on the outside and then just 5-yard outs from the slot receiver. And so, when you look at it from that standpoint, if they're running 2x2 and they only pass the ball 2 times and they only show these 2 route combinations, then that's a good way for you to kind of go into your game prep and think, okay, well, if we see this formation, we can check to this coverage because we know that they're probably going to do just these 2 routes. And then we could better run those coverages and those checks, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Doing good? Okay, cool. Yeah, so then when it comes to the other weeks, it always just would be about the same stuff, right? About the same level. So really you're probably looking at anywhere between, 10 to 15 pages. And I had myself, and then I had a couple other defensive coaches underneath me when I was a high school defensive coordinator. So most of the time I would just be printing out 3 copies. Sometimes when you run into those teams that run like a buttload of different formations or whatever, like, you're going to have some teams that run quite a few, right? So you're going to have, different adjustments and things like that. So sometimes those packets might tend to run a little bit longer, opposed to maybe some other weeks, where you might be only getting 1 or 2 formations. So the other nice thing too about Google Drive, and I'm going to show this to you guys too. So let's say that you do run your huddle assist breakdowns. Okay, so your huddle assist breakdowns obviously come out into PDFs, right? So if you save a copy of those PDFs, then you're able to then drop those into your drive. So then you're able to have them in the same spot. So like this was a example. So from 2018, a huddle assist breakdown, right? So that comes like straight from the huddle assist PDF. So you're able to save it and then just save that to your actual computer. Then I always just drag the file into the Google Drive folder. So if you share that out to your coaches or to your team as well, you would have to do creating the charts yourself. So that's a benefit of Google Drive as well. And I think that it works really well just to have everything in one spot. And this would be an example of like how I set up a season, okay? So you label each of your weeks, 1 through 10. Then from there, I go through and I make my charts for each of them. So if I go back to my start here, I put together a demo folder just so you guys can see it. So if I go through and I have week 1, right? So I would go through and I'd make another folder and I'd just type in week 2. And if you keep going, however many games that you have, I'd go through and I'd organize them that way. And then from there, I go into my folder where I've got my copies of what it is that I want to put in there, okay? Now, this is kind of where it gets to be a little tedious at times just because you're doing a lot of mouse clicking. But what I would do is once I have everything into my first folder, and maybe if you guys know an easier way to do it, you can share it with me. But then I would just make a copy of this and whatever it is. So I would label it as just week 2 defensive practice plans, okay? And click OK. And then I would move it back to my folder and move there. Okay. So I've got things in there that way. And then same thing, go through and you do the same thing with the other ones, right? And go through and do your other charts and things like that. Or like I said too, if you're using Huddle Assist, then you're able to just go into like where your files are, and you're able to pull in your different PDFs from there and just dragging and dropping them into your Google Drive folder for whatever it is that you're prepping for. So any questions so far, or anything that you want to see again?
Coach, maybe one question. When you use Google Drive, do you collaborate with your other coaches? Maybe when you have your defensive line coach working out the run game or different pass protections, so he can write this information in, and your defensive back coach is working with the pass route and pass combinations and typing this information in. Do you have some experience with collaborating over Google Drive?
Yeah. So what I would do sometimes with some of the coaches that I did work with, I would share out different jobs, right? So sometimes maybe if I would share out something to my linebackers coach, and I would say, okay, I want you to watch the guards and see what the guards are doing out of this formation. And then I would just share them the documents as I made them, right? So as I created them, I would just go into the folder that I made for that week. So like if I went into week 2, I would just go up here and I would share it, and I would type in, whoever it was that I was sharing it with, and then they could then get that link and then go through and live edit the documents as well while I also have them open. So I have done that before. I think if you're looking at going through like and just looking at like tendencies and small notes and things like that, I think in my opinion, setting up a chart like this, just a little 3-column with key players, because then you could put in like 88. He's used in 2x2 at the Z receiver, tendencies, long routes not used in quick game, right? So just small stuff like that. And you could go in and have that done by some of your assistant coaches as well, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great, Coach. I think that can help a lot with Google Drive.
For sure. And then different examples that I've done in the past, the different ones that I've used, our personnel, I use that quite a bit. And then an in-game play-by-play call chart is something that I think is really helpful. What I typically did when I was calling plays from the box when I was a high school defensive coordinator, I would just write this in myself. So I would print this out beforehand and I would have this up in the box with me. And then during a play, I would say, okay, well, so this is play 1, series 1, 1st and 10, and I called base, and the gain was +3, right? So then when you're going back and you're starting to look at your first, once you get the huddle entered in and you get whatever it is you're using for a video, I always like it just because when I was, when I was a kid, it was always funny, like in high school football, because you're in the team meeting room and everybody's in there, and you go to pull up a play and coach is like, oh, what call is this? And then you've got 3 or 4 guys start saying something. Oh, we called this. It's like, no, you didn't call that. So this is just kind of something that I like to have just to be organized and to eliminate any of that extra conversation that maybe sometimes happens in the film room, just because of kids maybe pointing out different things or what you called and things like that. Because then would be an easy reference. Then when you're going through and watching film, being like, okay, well, play 2, series 1, it was 2nd and 7, right? Because they had a +3, and we called yellow 55, Okay. And result, let's say we got a sack. So you go -2. Okay.
So I
And
don't, sorry
yeah,
for
go ahead.
sorry for interrupting, but this is actually what I do when I'm upstairs in the box,
Yeah.
and actually I use this kind of call chart and I upload it to Huddle.
Oh, nice. So
So that I
that
already
for you.
have all
Nice.
I don't have to take it afterwards. Is it something that you do, or do you have special people up there who do it for you, or you do it with Huddle Assist, or how do you do it?
We use Huddle Assist. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's one way. And I know when I did this, I would just write it on paper, and so that way when the film would get uploaded that night, if the Huddle Assist report hadn't come back yet, I could just go back and watch it real quick and look at what I called for those plays and those different possessions and series.
Yeah, I do it for the offensive guys. So other formations, motions, play call, whatsoever goes in there. But of course, it's a little confusing from time to time if the video misses a clip, or maybe
Yeah,
I mixed
for
up
sure.
something, or there's a I don't know a change of play on the field. So, but
Yeah, definitely. And then sometimes it always happens. I know that happens with me. Like sometimes, special teams play will get labeled as a defensive play, and then you're going through and making, your cut ups and you're selecting your defensive plays, but then you accidentally get a punt formation in there. So yeah, I get that for sure. So one of the things, the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of go through and talk about what I do in the breakdown process. And what I do when I'm prepping for a game and going through my analytics and things like that. So I don't know about you guys if you've got the capability or not, or what you have access to. But I'm kind of goofy, I guess. I like having at least 2 or 3 screens just because I like having the multiple windows. And Huddle actually has not Huddle. Google has an extension where you can have a Huddle efficiency extension put in, where you're able to, be able to work better off at both screens. I'm only
you mean the Chrome add-on?
Yeah, Chrome extension. Yeah. So that's pretty sweet. If I was on my downstairs computer, I'd be able to show you guys, but I'm just on my laptop. So, but yeah, so that's something that's pretty cool if that's something that you guys want to look into. But it kind of helps you be able to split screen better.
May I ask what exactly do you use it for? Because I only watch tape, and on the other screen I tech it. What else do you use it for?
So like I'll have like different windows open with the breakdowns or whatever. So like if I have the PDF open on one screen, then on the other one I'll have the film going. And then we use it a lot too for communication, as far as messaging out to team and things like that. So you're able to kind of have both of those windows open at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I typically work with 2 or 3 screens. And I typically, when I first start, I don't even have the computer, my other files going yet. And I go through and I watch it just with a paper and pencil first. And I use basically just some type of field diagram paper that has multiple boxes on it. And I typically go through and I'll chart formations from what I'm seeing first. And then from there, I'll go through and type in any general notes. That could be things such as key personnel, different things that I'm seeing as far as how they like to block, possibly, different key plays, like, if they only, run these 3 or 4 plays, they just run them out of different formations, things like that. Okay. So I do that first, just kind of like a clean, clean slate to start from. Then from there, I'll go back into it again. And then that's when I'm starting to cite whether it's run or pass on the different down and distances. Then I go in and enter the data into the charts. Then, like I said, too, once I've gotten all that stuff completed and you've got the list compiled, then I'm able to go through and share those out to staff, or print out any physical copies that I want to get to kids and things like that. Because some kids, we know some kids don't have access to technology at home, or they might only have it on their phone, so they can't see it that well. So if you've got a couple kids that that want a hard copy, you can print a couple out and have those ready for them when they come in. So, if I'm looking at just kind of a basic example, I use Google Drive to kind of keep track of. I've got all 22 film from quite a few different teams. So I use it for that as well. You know, it's a good way to store video clips. And sometimes if you leave a team, or if you go to a different place or whatever, you can download some of those video clips that you spent time working on in Huddle, and then you can put those into your Google Drive as well. So just for an example, the first thing that I'm doing when I'm watching the film here, we get a simple, we get a first play, so we know it's 1st and 10. So that's the first thing that I'm kind of noting. And then I'm looking at what the formation is. So we know that it's a 2x2. These guys are kind of stacked, kind of closer to the formation. So I'm making note of that as well. I'm looking at possibly, a key player that I know that's in a certain spot, or one that I've kind of got an eye on or whatever. So obviously we know from this that we'd be watching QB, right? We'd be watching 16. He's the stud. So we want to be taking note of that. So from there, you see, I would just go based off of the route combinations for what I saw. That didn't work well, did it? So I would just be working off the route combination from what I see, looking at what they do from the outside in, and kind of charting that and writing that in my notes that I would then include into my breakdowns. Any questions on that?
No, coach, everything is clear.
Awesome. Yeah, so then from there, I'd go through and I'd go into my next play, right? So it's my first play. Now I go to my next one. And now with this one, this is another 2x2, but it's a different variation, right? So we've moved away from the receivers being stacked near the formation, and they're out in ones almost out to the numbers. So we'd want to take note of that in our documentation with our data. And also we'd be looking at any other personnel changes, looking at if anything changed with substitutions, different things like that. And then now we know that this is 2nd down. So see what happens here. Get a quick little pitch option, right? So that's, another note that I would take. Okay, on 2nd down, 2x2 spread. They ran the ball. So that would go into my next portion of my notes. Now into this one, another 2x2 variation. So, I mean, I can just complain for a second. It's tough being a defensive coordinator today, man, just with all the different formations that you see. Because right now we've seen 2x2 our first 3 plays, and we've seen it 3 different variations, right? So the first time we had stacked near, second time it was spread, but now we've got them stacked, and one's kind of spread out, one's kind of near the formation. So it's tough being a D coordinator, and sometimes I envy the offensive coaches just for, the sake of the stuff that they're able to throw at us. But with me, philosophically, for defense, when I was a defensive coordinator at the high school level, I was really key on bringing pressure and bringing a lot of different variations of how those looked. And I always kind of told my kids that I coached, I always said that, the offense adapts to us. We don't adapt to the offense. So, I'm going to throw all this different stuff at you and bring pressures, and you're not going to know where guys are coming from. And that's one way, in my personal opinion, to combat some of the offenses that you're seeing nowadays with a lot of the dynamic throwing and things like that. So personal.
If you look at all this, I mean, all the formations and 1st down, 2nd down, 1st and 10, 1st and 5, maybe. How many of the last games would you incorporate in your
And my
script
prep
for the opponents, like the
yeah.
last game only, or the tendency over all the season, or only maybe if they played an opponent that's playing a similar defense than you are.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. So typically what I would do is I go and look back at like the last two games. So I would just use the most two recent games. Because in my opinion, I think that there is a point where you could run into too much. And I think if you, I don't know if you guys, if you watched the Super Bowl from a couple years ago, when the Rams played the Patriots, and Sean McVay, who's the head coach for the Rams, one of the things that he said after the game is that he felt like he almost over-prepared and almost watched too much film, right? I think that there's a point where you can, enter that barrier of too much film, just because, I think brains have a saturation point, and sometimes you start second-guessing yourself and maybe second-guessing what you're seeing out of different things. But I think if you're able to just look at the last two games, and then I think that's a good jumping point, just because from there you're able to kind of get a good feel for some of the plays that are being called most recently. But you also had a really good point too with looking at maybe a team that runs a similar defense, things like that, just to get different ideas. I think that there's definitely value in that. But I wouldn't get too crazy and do more than 2 or 3 plays in your prep work.
Okay.
So, and then I think that, once you start getting into the late season games and, sometimes, at least when I was coaching high school, you see different opponents that you've played earlier that played them, and you could easily have access to 7 or 8 games. I think sometimes that just gets to be too much. Like I said, you don't want to overwhelm yourself and things like that. Now, if you run data for those, I think that there's value in that, just because obviously the more numbers that you get, the more numbers that you compile, you're able to have a better picture at what the offense is doing. So I don't necessarily see, if you're just running data on 9 games, then I think there's definitely value in that, just because you're able to go through and get a good picture of, what they're doing on first down, what they're doing on second down. And you're definitely able to use that to your advantage. I know that there are a few times when, you're kind of prepping for teams that you play a few years in a row, and you got a really good feel for what they're doing. That's always helpful as well.
Yeah, that's good, coach.
Any other questions you guys got?
Not at the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so in this one, so we got 2x2 stack, just a different formation. Now, a key note there that you could definitely take note of is how the running back is used in the pass game. I feel like that's a lot of value defensively as well when you're prepping, just to take note about if they're using him in the pass game more as a blocker or more as a, one of the short check down routes. I think there's definitely a lot of, situations where that can help you in your prep work and your breakdown, and also something that you could put into your key personnel notes. Number 9, when he's in the backfield in different passing situations, they only use him on short routes, or they only use him as an extra blocker. I think that's important to take note of as well. We got another 1st and 10 here. And so I think it's interesting here, because then now this is where you kind of start to see a little bit of a pattern to the last 2 first downs, right? We got similar formations now on first down the last 2 times. And we'll see what happens. We had a quick game outside. So that's something that you could definitely, again, take note of, right? First down, number 9's in the backfield. We get a fake, and we get a quick game out to the outside, okay? So again, something important to take note of. Now, this is the first time where we get a different formation look. So that's something that you'd want to take note of and jot down. So on second down in the second offensive series is the first time that we got a different formation look, right? So that's the first time that we've seen something different than a 2-by-2 set. Okay, so we kind of get a trips left, stack near formation, and then second and long, so we get a pass, right? So 2nd and 10, pass. So that's, again, another note that you would make is that 2nd and long, we have trips, we get a pass, okay? All right, let me go back to my thing here.
Coach, when you write all that down, is that more for you as a preparation, or is it also for, like, if you hand it out to your players? It might be helpful, of course, for the, I don't know, team captains or the captain of your defense. How do you control it if they actually know what you put in the work?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. So I mean, I share it with my other defensive coaches, and one of the things that I try to do, well, one, just because I'm kind of stingy about you know, when I'm handing my game planning out and I'm giving kids packets, I don't hand out a ton. I would try to keep it to kids that I know that are going to be playing a lot, and kids that I know are going to look at it. Because I don't necessarily want, 15 of my game prep packets floating around, and next thing you know, kid has one in the backpack. It gets, it falls out of the backpack when they're at the game, gets found in the locker room, and then, there's all sorts of different situations that can happen there. So I typically, when I would give mine out, I give it to, maybe if I have a defensive back that is calling a lot of coverages, I would give them obviously a copy just so that way they're able to go through the formations and see different tendencies. Then I also think it's really important too for if you guys use Mike linebacker or some sort of middle linebacker that does some of your signaling in and things like that. I think it's important for them to also get a good feel and a good idea of what the other team's tendencies are. So I was just going to open up the last few minutes or so for questions. If you guys have anything else for me or anything that's football related outside of game planning and analytics. But this is my contact information here, my Gmail account, my Twitter handle, then also my cell phone number. I'm not sure if you guys would be able to call it or not, but you can always reach for me via Twitter or email too. If you guys ever have any questions or want to see some templates, I'd be happy to share some of the stuff that I've created with you guys, so you can use it to help out your preparation.
Yeah, that's great, Coach. I've got another question. You talked about in the beginning. You talked about the tablets at the sideline. Are you able to use them at the collegiate level?
It kind of depends from like league to league. From different levels allow different things. So that's kind of something that plays into that. When I was at the high school level, you're able to have them on the sidelines. So when I was at Peoria Notre Dame, we had 2 on the sidelines and 1 up in the box. So we were kind of fortunate in that aspect, just because we had a coach up in the box looking at something, and then down on the sidelines, you'd be able to get the live feed in too, so you can look back at different things.
Okay, that's great, because we are not allowed to use them here because we play under NCAA rules and they don't.
Right.
That's the problem we have. I would like to test it again, but I think from your point of view, that's a big advantage, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the high school level, it was huge just because of being able to have immediate feedback, right? Like if you're, if you're looking at, why a play broke or, you know, if they break a big run, where was, you know, where was the hole at, and things like that. So there's definitely value in that as well.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I hope they will change maybe in the far future the rule for the NCAA to use tablets too.
Yeah, for sure.
Coach, we talked about game planning.
Yeah.
Is that the Google Drive something that you use for practice as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So in the past, I've made like scout plays and things like that. I've put those into different presentations, and I've used you know, for the script, as far as like, you know,
Yeah.
things like that. I'll put that chart in there, and I'll give that typically to my coaches. And one of the things I did myself when I was a high school defensive coordinator, I'd put the scout plays into a binder along with the script for the way that I would like the order that I'd want them run in. So then we could, you know, do different checks and calls off of things that way.
Yeah, that's great. I think the way to organize the things and work together with different coaches, I think they can make our lives a little bit easier. Because, for example, you talked about the depth charts. The last years, I ask every position coach who is up there, and then I put it into Excel file. And I think with Google Drive, it's a little bit easier, so every coach can modify their own depth chart.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's good too, because just with the amount of space that you have, you're able to save past years stuff. So sometimes if you're in one spot for a while, like I was at Peoria Notre Dame, I mean, I had, you know, 5 years of stuff on some of those teams that I played. And so you're able to kind of really prep very, you know, as you know, more wholesomely, just by the amount of information that you're keeping and the stuff that you have saved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Coach,
great.
I have another question. It's not that much Google related, but more Huddle. But
Yeah.
since you said that you are not looking at the game tape from like last year or the year before, unless it's an opponent where you know there were no big changes, maybe. Because especially in our league in Germany, we have so many changes, especially from player personnel each year.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense because the offense defense coordinator has to adapt. But if you want to look at a I don't know, an opponent from last year or the year before, how do you handle the storage for Huddle? I mean, you can basically only have one season, not even the full season.
Right.
You download the games and upload it to another platform, or you have it on an external hard drive, or how do you do it?
Yeah, so you could. I don't have an external hard drive. So on my Google Drive, I've got like 2 TB of space, and I think it's like so I think it's like $9.99 a month for that level of space. So as far as like what I do, so like if you're running into limits with storage, I would just take it and I put it into there if you've got the capability of having the extra space.
So you would download it from Huddle with all the text and all the reports, put it onto your Google Drive, and then
I would just take the video document, just the video.
Oh, just the video.
Yeah, and then I would just put it over. And I think that a couple of my buddies have used external hard drives before too, so I think that's another way that you could do it. I always kind of shied away from it just because the initial sticker price, I feel like sometimes it's like, oh, holy crap. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, with what I spend, you know, from month to month, it's, you know. So.
Okay, and if you're honest, how often does it happen that you're looking back at games like last year or even the year before?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back and watch the old tape all the time.
But for scouting reason or for?
So just, you know, just to watch sometimes and to get a feel of, because there's times you're like, oh, you know, you might be prepping for a certain opponent, but then you think back to like, oh, you know, this team that we played 2 years ago, they ran something similar, but we did this that worked. What was it? And then you got to go back and look. You know what I'm saying? So so I've done that before. And then, for my own personal purposes, I like going back sometimes and watching different NFL, Power 5, big school, different types of game tape from them, just because I think there's a lot of value that can be had with how NFL defensive coordinators and also the big college coordinators, how they attack those different formations and the stuff that you see a lot in football nowadays.
Okay. Yeah.
If you watch for example college football, which teams are you watching, and what are some newly trends you're following or trying to study?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of like the bigger schools that I watch, I'm a big Alabama football fan. I watch them quite a bit. I watch University of Notre Dame quite a bit. And then I watched a lot of the Big Ten schools like Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State. I think that there's a lot of good football that's played at those big schools. I think defensively, one of the things that you're starting to see a little bit more is different things with the mint front and the tight front. You're seeing that come into play nowadays quite a bit. And then another thing that I've kind of been looking at recently in the last couple of years is simulated pressure usage. So some of the defensive formations where we're simulating a blitz or simulating some type of pressure to make it look like something else, so you might have, a Mike linebacker walked up on into a zero, right over the center and then bailing to the middle of the field. But I think those are definitely some different things that are kind of becoming, where the game's at right now and where it's going. Then obviously another thing that's really big defensively right now is quarters coverage. You see that quite a bit as well, especially when you're looking at defending some of the quick game pass schemes and things like that. So.
Yeah, that's cool. I think I'm trying to dig into the mint and tight front too.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch. I watched some LSU tapes from last year to see some of how they handle the tight front.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to study some football, and especially during this time.
Yeah, for sure. It's important, I think, as a coach to always be learning, and I think that just to constantly be open to new ideas and open to different things, just to keep growing as a coach. I think it's important.
Yeah, that's good. So, from the top of my head, I don't have any questions about your topic, Google Drive. I think you presented so many different values we can get out of Google Drive as an organization form for our staff and coaches. And
awesome.
Yeah, that was great how you shared and presented the information. Any other questions?
I think I already asked all the questions I could possibly ask. So thank you very much, Coach.
Yeah, you bet. And then, like I said, if you guys want copies of anything, or if you want any of those charts, just go ahead and shoot me an email or
can you show your contact informations again? I forgot to write them down.
Yep.
That'd be nice. I'll just take a quick screenshot. Yeah, there you go. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Yes, if you want any of those copies or anything, just let me know, and happy to get them to you guys.
Yeah, Coach, thank you very much for your time and for all the knowledge you presented to us. And stay safe during this time, and hopefully you can get back to football soon.
Yeah, same to you guys, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, take care.
Yeah,
You too.
Thanks.
Goodbye, Coach. Have a nice day.
Yep.